Did you know the ultimate secret to finding a lifelong partner, or the underlying logic of selecting top life partners, is actually not in those modern dating apps filled with left and right swipes, nor is it written in business textbooks on Wall Street. The protagonist of this story is a thirsty old man and 10 severely dehydrated camels. If you are currently facing the choice of marriage, or struggling to find the right person in your life or career, or even if you feel exhausted by the fast food style love in modern society, please focus your attention because the next few minutes will completely over. Dear friends, imagine this scene. You are a super rich person with a net worth of tens of billions. Not only do you have a huge business empire, but you also shoulder a family mission that is about to change the course of human history. You are getting old, and your only heir. You might hire the top headhunting company or host a blind date reality show globally, right? However, 4,000 years ago, the Middle Eastern tycoon Abraham made a decision that seems absolutely crazy and jaw-dropping today. He didn't let his son fall in love on his own, nor did he seek. He placed his hand under the thigh of his most trusted butler and swore to entrust the future of the entire family and the lifelong affairs of his son to this old man. Then, the old butler embarked on a blind journey of nearly 800 kilometers with no photos, no WeChat, no background check. The butler doesn't even know the name of the girl he is looking for. He walked to a well in a strange city and made a strange prayer, similar to flipping a coin. Oh my God, which girl not only gave me water to drink, but also offered to fetch. Do you think this is ridiculous when you hear this in the 21st century American culture that emphasizes free love and the supremacy of feelings, or any modern culture? This arranged marriage, which is akin to seeking divination, is simply a recipe for disaster. If we put this script today, however, the plot undergoes the biggest reversal here as the old butler not only finds the perfect girl Rebecca, but also creates one of the most stable, long-lasting, and successful marriages in the Bible through this seemingly absurd cross-border blind date. In the era when polygamy was prevalent, his son Isaac only married Rebecca throughout his life, and the two grew old together. What the hell is going on here? Why do we have big data matching, personality testing, and endless social circles today, but a divorce rate as high as 50%, while 4,000 years ago an old man by the well could find the perfect soulmate with the help of 10 camels tests? The highlight here is not only the mystery of history, but also its direct impact on the deepest pain point of modern people. After having unlimited choices, we have lost the ability to love and the standard of judgment. Today, we will use a scientific perspective and psychological logic to deconstruct the epic business and love case of Isaac marrying Rebecca and see what kind of human code it actually hides. Firstly, we need to understand that the old butler's prayer by the well is not the blind bet we made in Las Vegas casinos, but an extremely clever and scientifically based extreme stress test. Let's use a modern scientific perspective to recreate the physics and biology scenes of that time. That was on the edge of the hot desert in the Middle East. In the evening, the old butler stopped by the well with 10 camels that had just traveled hundreds of kilometers. How much do you know about the biological characteristics of camels? A camel that has been walking in the desert for several days and is extremely thirsty can drink 30 to 40 gallons of water in 10 minutes, which is about 110 to 150 liters of water. The old butler has 10 camels. What does this mean? This means that if someone wants to feed these 10 camels, she needs. 4,000 years ago, there were no electric water pumps or water pipes. Drawing water is a heavy physical activity that requires using a rope to place a heavy water tank at the bottom of the well, pulling it up, pouring it into the sink, and then putting it down again, repeating this process hundreds of times. Everyone. Imagine that scene. The old butler asked a beautiful young girl for a sip of water, which was normal in the hospitality of that time. Any girl with basic manners would give him a sip of water. However, the standard set by the butler is that the girl must take the initiative to propose and actually go fetch water for those 10. From the perspectives of behavioral psychology and biology, what is the butler screening for? He doesn't screen based on appearance, family background, or even pure kindness. He is screening for an extremely rare combination of traits: high empathy, amazing physical fitness, outstanding execution, and a psychological trait known as extreme altruism. This leads to our first core logic: true virtues and strength can only be tested There is a famous concept in modern social psychology called thin slicing, which means that humans can make accurate judgments in a very short moment by observing the subconscious behavior of others. The butler is a senior HR who has read countless people. He knows very well that the kindness spoken of is the cheapest. In modern business society, when interviewing candidates or looking for entrepreneurial partners, we often look at their resumes and listen to them talk about how excellent their teamwork skills are. But in a real stressful environment, once it involves huge sacrifices of interests or extremely... Rebecca did not back down. When she said, "I would also fetch water for your camels until they were drunk," she didn't know that the old man in front of her, dressed in dust and dirt, was a super butler with a huge fortune. And she didn't know that these hundreds of cans of water would be exchanged for a super family heir for her. She is purely driven by a deeply ingrained altruistic instinct and diligent upbringing. Let's combine a modern case story to see the power of this trait. Robert Epstein, a psychology PhD from the University of California, conducted a multi-year study on the potential of modern marriage, comparing traditional Western romantic love-driven marriages with arranged or highly matched marriages in some Asian cultures. The result is very shocking. In the Western love model, the emotional satisfaction of both spouses reaches its peak in the first 18 months after marriage, and then shows a clear downward curve. Why? Because this combination is often based on hormones, dopamine, and initial attraction to appearance. However, in marriages based on values, family responsibility, diligence, and shared goals, the emotional satisfaction of both partners may be low at the beginning of marriage, but over time, this curve steadily increases, even surpassing the satisfaction of romance. Dr. Epstein's conclusion is that lasting love is not so much a spontaneous emotion as a cultivated ability. The foundation of this ability lies in whether both parties possess altruism and a spirit of service similar to that of Rebecca. In our lives, many people make inward-looking lists when searching for a partner. I want him to be wealthy. I want her to be beautiful. I want him to provide emotional value, and I want her to understand my soul. This self-centered view of mate selection often collapses instantly when faced with the real. And what the butler was looking for Isaac was a partner with the ability to export outward. Do you think a woman who is willing to silently pour a ton of water under the scorching sun for strangers and animals would easily give up when she enters marriage, when her family faces famine? Her resilience and selflessness are the strongest scientific guarantees that this family can inherit. Not only that, this story also provides us adults, aged 30 to 70, with a profound reflection on the paradox of choice. Renowned American psychologist Barry Schwartz pointed out in his book, The Paradox of Choice, that the more choices people face, the more likely they are to feel anxious, the harder they are to make decisions, and the more likely they are to feel regret after making a decision. This explains why young people nowadays swipe through hundreds or thousands of faces on social media every day, yet still feel like they can't find true love. Because there are too many choices, we always feel that the next one may be better, thus losing our commitment and deep management to the current choice. Looking back at Abraham, their father and son made an extremely counterintuitive move, limiting their options, even outsourcing them to agents of absolute trust and a set of strict value standards. Abraham said to the old butler, "Do not search in the land of Canaan where we currently reside. Go back to my hometown." This is known as homophily in sociology. Although modern people do not necessarily have to look for fellow townsmen, the logical core here is that a high degree of consistency in underlying values, beliefs, and attitudes towards life is 100 times more important than any superficial shared interest. Isaac, as the male protagonist, fully trusts the judgment of his father and butler, and he has given up the opportunity cost of blind trial and error in the market. When the old butler returned with Rebekah, there was an extremely touching detail in the Bible. As it was getting late, Isaac came out to meditate in the fields, lifted his eyes, and saw some camels coming. Rebekah also lifted her eyes and saw Isaac, so she quickly got off the camel. Isaac brought Rebekah into his mother's tent, married her, and loved her. Ladies and gentlemen, please carefully savor the emotions and logic behind this passage. Isaac was meditating in the fields, which in Hebrew has a meaning of meditation, reflection, and even prayer. A mature man in his 40s, after experiencing the pain of losing his mother, did not get drunk in the tavern, nor did he seek comfort amidst the noise and lusts. he is quietly waiting and building his own spiritual world. Neuroscience research has shown that when humans are in an environment of extreme anxiety and sustained stimulation, such as constantly scrolling through their phones, frequent meaningless socializing, the amygdala of the brain becomes overly active, making it difficult to establish deep emotional connections. When a person is in a state of contemplation and introspection, the prefrontal cortex of the brain dominates, and the emotional connections generated at this time are the most stable and profound. Upon seeing such a peaceful and profound man, Rebecca immediately made the gesture of dismounting his camel, which was a sign of respect and confirmation of a two-way rush. Without trial marriages or prolonged ambiguous struggles, they entered into a deep commitment relationship based on shared values and extreme stress tests in the early stages. This is not only a myth of love, but also a textbook for efficient decision-making. Let's delve deeper into another extremely important but easily overlooked aspect of the story. Rebecca's personal will. After confirming Rebecca's identity, the butler took out a large amount of gold and silver jewelry to her family. In ancient societies, this usually meant that the transaction was completed, and the fate of the girl was determined by her father and brother. Elijah's brother and mother do want to delay the time, saying, "Let the girl stay for another 10 days and a half months. But the butler was very resolute, saying that since the matter had already been... At this point, the family handed over the decision, making power to Rebecca. They called her over and asked her, "Are you going with this person?" Rebecca answered, 3 words very decisively, "I'll go." What courage and vision is this? In an era without any modern means of transportation, leaving the familiar environment and crossing the vast desert to marry a man whom one has never met before almost means never seeing one's family again. The risk preference theory in psychology tells us that most people instinctively choose familiar comfort when faced with a huge unknown, which is why so many people are trapped in unsatisfactory jobs and relationships and cannot extricate themselves. But Rebecca has a rare growth mindset and intuition she could keenly perceive from the butler's demeanor, the wealth he brought, and the coincidence of the entire event, that there was a mission beyond ordinary life calling her. In the business world, we often say that wealth and fortune are in danger, but the true entrepreneurial spirit is not blind gambling, but daring to cut off the retreat at critical moments after seeing the underlying logic and vision, all in. Elijah's words, "I go," not only won her love, but also made her the mother of a great nation's clan. If you are currently in a bottleneck period of your career or hovering at a crossroads in life, ask yourself, when you are convinced that this set of values is correct, and when the butler who changes your destiny stands in front of you, do you have the courage to abandon all hesitation like Rebecca and firmly say one sentence? Now, let's gather all the clues to elevate and review this wonderful story from 4,000 years ago and see how it truly guides our lives today. We have dismantled the entire process of Isaac marrying Rebecca, which is essentially a perfect system for selecting life partners. Firstly, it tells us not to be misled by the quality of selection is always greater than the quantity. Clearly define your core values and standards. Like Abraham's insistence on finding like-minded people, then trust this standard, and don't waste your life energy on irrelevant options. Secondly, true quality testing always occurs in scenario. The person who can accompany you to the end is definitely not someone who sweet talks to you in good times, but someone like Rebecca who is willing to silently pour 1,000 liters of water for you under the scorching sun. Thirdly, deep love is built on commitment, responsibility, and shared mission, rather than momentary. Isaac's contemplation and acceptance in the fields demonstrated the composure and steadfastness of a mature mind in the face of contracts. But the most profound thought I want to leave for everyone is about the universal law of altruistic thinking. At the beginning of this story, the old butler was waiting by the well when Rebecca appeared. Please remember, when Rebecca bent down, fetching water from cans to cans, panting and exhausted, all she saw in her eyes were a group of thirsty camels and a tired old man. She didn't see the gold bracelet, the silver necklace, or the wealthy and affectionate husband of the future. She is simply being a good person, sacrificing her kindness and physical strength. However, it was this pure, selfless act. This is the truth that our era needs to revisit the most. In today's highly competitive society, where everyone is calculating input-output ratios, we are becoming increasingly shrewd and afraid of losing out. Before we do anything, we must first ask, What benefit? But the operating logic of the universe is often the opposite. When you stare fixedly at the gold bracelet, you often get nothing. But when you focus on how to solve others' pain, how to fetch water and quench their thirst, gold bracelets, wealth, opportunities, and even perfect partners will automatically come to you as byproducts of your altruistic behavior. When you operate a business with an altruistic mindset, design products, and treat your customers and employees, you are not only creating business value, but also accumulating the confidence of those 10 camels for your own life. When you treat your spouse and friends with an altruistic attitude, not caring about who washes dishes and cooks today, but sincerely wanting to alleviate each other's burdens, your marriage will surpass the test of time and become the destination of each other's souls, just like Isaac and Rebekah. Friends, stop complaining about not meeting the right person, and stop worrying about why your career is stagnant. Step out of your tent filled with calculation and anxiety and walk to the well of life. Look around you. There must be those thirsty camels in need of your help. Roll up your sleeves when you pour out your kindness and effort without reservation. The old butler holding the key to changing your destiny may have already smiled and stood behind you. May we all possess the diligence and decisiveness of Rebekah, as well as the calmness and tolerance of Isaac. True gold is always hidden in the hands of those who are willing to fetch water for others.